And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go.
Hello again, and welcome to American Top 40. I'm Casey Kasem, and I want to thank Dave, debuting this week at number 36.
Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another incredible installment from very high above all the puerile and insipid forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, debuting at number 36. Behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone, this is Cowboy State Politics. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Friday. It's Open Line Friday. That's right, my friends. Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics. This is the day where we talk about whatever you want to talk about. You see, this is different. Like normally during the week, you have to talk about what I want to talk about because, if it's some sort of random thing, I'm probably just going to ignore you. Not on Friday. Friday, we do whatever you want to do. So if you want to be part of the program, the phone number here in the studio is 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989. Just go ahead and give me a call and tell me what's on your mind. Now, I'm not saying that I won't hang up on you. I mean, I have been known to do that, but for the most part, we'll at least try to talk about whatever's on your mind. So, Agent 29, have you noticed how your Colorado Rockies are doing this year? I mean, have you really noticed, been paying attention?
I don't care.
You shouldn't. Nobody else cares
I don't
either.
think they've won 10 games yet.
They haven't. They've only won 9 games. They're like 9-47.
Yeah. Well, you've got to be exceptional in some.
Well, if you're going to do something, you should do the best you possibly can.
We were looking earlier, and I think who was the team out of Cleveland?
Yes.
That went at the end of the year. They were, I don't know, 20 and 144
yeah, so the
or something.
1899 Cleveland Spiders.
Yeah, the Spiders.
They were 20 and 134.
I wonder if I can get me a Cleveland Spiders hoodie.
I'm sure we could have one made. But, in the modern era, by modern era, I mean, when they're playing 160 games. So, you've got people like the Philadelphia Phillies. In 1942, they were 42 and 109. But we are so far away from 42 wins with the Colorado Rockies. Though, I really shouldn't say too much because my Texas Rangers are kind of irritating the crap out of me right now. They're not even playing 500 baseball, which come on. If you're not going to even get close to 500, maybe you should just go fishing. I mean, no, that's not very nice of me. They're still playing okay baseball, but they really need to step it up if they have any hope of going to the playoffs.
It's kind of funny you say that because if you watch the quality of the players, regardless of when you're in the big leagues,
oh man,
you're good.
Oh, well, and you know what's fascinating about that? When there's a 90-mile-an-hour pitch coming at you, you have a tenth of a second to decide whether or not you're going to swing. So think about that. The ball is coming out of the pitcher's hand, and it's moving so fast you probably can't even see the fingers. But a lot of big league hitters, they know what pitch it is by the rotation of the ball. So, I mean, your senses have to be like so on point.
Not me.
Yeah, not me either. I love to play baseball, but I was not very good at it. And interestingly enough, so hitting a baseball is the hardest thing to do in professional sports. You're attempting to hit something about this big around that is traveling at 90 miles an hour with something else that is also round, and hitting it solid enough to where it actually goes out in the field and it's not a foul ball or anything.
You're going to play a little bit of Robin Williams on golf. 18 times!
18 times. Well, anyway, my friends, enough bad baseball talk about the Colorado Rockies and the Texas Rangers. Another cool thing that happened, maybe it was yesterday, but I saw it this morning on Fox News. Now we actually catch people that leak classified information. Before Donald Trump was president, if you were Joe Biden, classified information ended up in your garage right next to your Corvette, or maybe it ended up in Hunter's bedroom. We were never really sure, because we do know that Hunter did live with mommy and daddy for a while. But from Fox News, United States IT specialist arrested for attempting to share classified information with a foreign government, according to the DOJ. And I quote, "A government employee in Virginia was arrested on Thursday and accused of attempting to share classified information with an officer or agent of a foreign government," the Department of Justice announced. Nathan Latch, a 28-year-old IT specialist employed by the Defense Intelligence Agency since 2019, was arrested after the FBI received a tip in March of 2025 that someone was willing to provide classified information to a friendly foreign government. First of all, if you are seeking classified information from the United States, you're probably not a friendly government. But anyway, an email to the FBI said that person, later identified as Latch, didn't agree or align with the values of the Trump administration. And so he's going to betray his country. This is how far we've come, my friends, that if you disagree politically, then evidently that warrants treason, which, that's what sharing classified information with a foreign government is, regardless if they're, friendly or not. But, and here's the thing, like even friendly governments, the British, the Australians, they have spies all over the place. I mean, we have the CIA, and Lord knows what we're doing in foreign countries. But the truth is that if you are willing to share classified information with the foreign government, you're most likely kind of treasonous and definitely need to go to prison. Unlike all of the leaks, and I suppose maybe we should classify this a little bit. So a leak is different than sharing classified information with a foreign government, but the two are essentially the same. You're taking information that was meant for American citizens or the administration or your place of work, and you're sharing it with somebody else. Who is on the receiving end only matters in the severity of the crime, in my opinion. You're still doing the same thing. It's kind of like stealing a loaf of bread versus stealing a Ferrari. Okay, you're still stealing. It's just one is $500,000. The other one is, well, depending on who's in power, a loaf of bread might be $10. Who knows? But still theft, still sharing classified information, and this guy got caught. So Latch communicated with an FBI agent whom he believed to be a foreign government official multiple times and would confirm that he was ready to share classified information that he transcribed onto a notebook at his desk, the DOJ said. He allegedly exfiltrated the information from his workspace multiple times over a 3-day period in preparation. The FBI set up an operation at a Northern Virginia park where Latch was to deposit classified information, quote, for the foreign government to retrieve, according to the DOJ. He was observed by the FBI on or about May 1st, depositing an item at a specified location. Once he left, the DOJ said FBI agents retrieved a thumb drive from the area, found to contain a message from Latch and multiple typed documents with information, portion marked for secret or top secret levels. So this guy is definitely a traitor, definitely willing to sell out his country. And here's the other thing. Like, according to the article, he didn't really get anything in return. It was just, he was willing to sell us out, which I don't know if it makes any difference if you're selling out somebody for money or if you're just doing it for the heck of it. But this guy, definitely a traitor, definitely needs to go away. Now, the rest of today's program could probably be entitled something to the akin of, no kidding, who saw that one coming? Who could have possibly ever saw that this was going to happen? So in America, we have this thing called the First Amendment. It guarantees
Willy-nilly.
willy-nilly. Other countries don't have the First Amendment. They deal with free speech. Come on, Agent 29, you were supposed to hit the willy-nilly.
I'm so far ahead of you.
Evidently, yeah, you're drinking your coffee. Well, anyway, other countries don't have the freedom of speech. And this is one of those that I think a lot of people take for granted, that you're able to say whatever you want and you really can't be held, to account. You can't be thrown in jail for your opinion, unless, of course, it's, we do have laws against slander and those sorts of things. You can't say something about someone who's not true. That's not true. But for the most part, you have the freedom to criticize the government in any way, shape, or form. Not give up classified information like that idiot. But pretty much, for the most part, you can criticize the government all you want.
Unless you're the president.
Unless you're the president, in which case you get sued all over the place. But European nations are grappling with a growing, quote, free speech problem under Trump's gaze. Now, this is one of the reasons that Vice President J.D. Vance went overseas. And you remember the whole big media kerfuffle where he accused European nations of being against free speech? Well, it's actually true. Quote, European nations are waking up to the consequences of their own censorship. A foreign senior advisor to President Donald Trump argued on Wednesday, a cultural shift due in part to Trump's return to the world stage. Jason Miller, a longtime political strategist and the founder of Getter, spoke at the EU-US summit at the Four Seasons Hotel in Budapest, where he discussed the European Union's ongoing attempts at censorship of European citizens with former White House Director of Domestic Policy. These titles get so long. It's so hard. But, all right, so this is this guy's title. White House Director of Domestic Policy Council, Joe Grogan, and Matt Mowers, president of the global strategies firm Valcor. Miller held up a copy of The Economist that featured a startling headline in bold, quote, Europe's free speech problem. Okay, first, free speech is never a problem. Okay, the only problem that could surround that would be the lack of free speech. But we should have, I am increasingly becoming a free speech absolutist, in that I think that you should be able to say anything that you want. And in fact, I think that you should be able to lie if you want to, and that we should let the free marketplace of ideas deal with whatever you happen to say. With rights come responsibilities, and with every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. So I don't really think that we should try to criminalize speech in any way. In fact, when it comes to the First Amendment, the only right that you actually do have is to be offended. Like, if you don't have a right to be offended, that we don't have free speech at all. And we can't just have only the speech that you like or the speech that you tolerate. But in Europe, again, there is no First Amendment. And listen to how troubling this becomes. Let's see here. An example of how the United Kingdom is dealing with free speech. Listen to this. They are requesting a backdoor to Apple's iCloud encryption to help the British government access Apple iCloud user data. The Daily Wire broke the news in February that the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, was probing the potential implications of such an arrest. I can tell you what those are. Pre-crime, right? Searching for, and of course, they're only going to use this against the really bad actors, the people that are really, really causing a problem. Yeah, Christians, conservatives, gun nuts. Of course, it's really hard to be a gun enthusiast in Great Britain. You're more likely, even if you're a knife enthusiast, you might have a problem over there. But on Wednesday, Miller shared that the, quote, UK government is telling the United States that if Apple still wants to continue doing business in the UK, then they have to give up access to the iCloud. Of course, he noted, they say it's only to stop the worst of the worst. To stop the bad actors. Oh, I'm sure. Anyone in the U.S. intelligence side will tell you, if you open up people's personal iClouds, it's going to take hackers about 5 minutes to get inside of it, and then they will hack into everybody's iCloud. Now, this is one of the reasons why I try really hard not to use any sort of cloud stuff. Now, if I'm sharing a sound bite or, some big file with Agent 29, okay, we'll just upload it to Google Drive, And, if it's something that's innocuous that I'm not really worried about anybody else finding, sure, easy file transfer. But if it's something that's important, a big story that I've got, for example, I have operatives all over the state of Wyoming, and I am in possession of some pretty interesting video that was recorded in different places. There's no way you'll ever get me to upload that to a cloud. I mean, it's far too sensitive. If there are some things that are, potentially sensitive, even sometimes I'll put it on a removable drive or a portable drive, and I'll give a copy to Agent 29, and so he can secure it in a safe. So I've got 2 different copies of it. So, but it's just to thwart any attempts like this. I mean, you should never trust technology companies with sensitive data. You wouldn't put your taxes online. Why should you do this? I mean, it's not very smart at all.
Oh, great. Now you're going to have people coming by my house trying to figure out where the safe is.
Yeah, well, fortunately, there's other things that protect.
I was thinking when you talk about the Google Drive and you said, well, it's easy to download. Yeah, except for I have to call my grandson and have him talk me through the process.
That's true. It's still... here at Cowboy State Politics, we are technologically advanced and at the same time kind of getting old. So sometimes it's a little bit difficult for us. So thanks to Trump's comments on the issue, as well as Vice President J.D. Vance's remarks at the Munich Security Conference earlier this year, much more attention is on the European leaders leading the charge to censor their own citizens. Quote, President Trump and the administration are calling attention to censorship in Europe, and I think really putting the bully pulpit to use, Miller told the Daily Wire in an interview following his remarks. He argued that this is way too easy for countries to sweep under the rug. And so this Miller guy, let's see here. I think I've got a soundbite here, and let's just listen to Jason Miller. It's cut number 3. Go ahead and hit it.
Difference here is everybody knows many of these decisions aren't being made by individual countries. What they're being made by are the bureaucrats who are in Brussels, who are unelected. They're unaccountable to anything that's happening, as any backlash, and they want to snuff out any aspect of dissension or free speech. We all must be united against fighting back on what these bureaucrats and technocrats in Brussels are trying to force down the throat of the sovereignty-loving people in all the nations of the EU.
Okay, so exactly right. 2 problems he brings up there, that a lot of these decisions are being made by unelected bureaucrats, people that were never on a ballot, that the people never chose to lead them. They're just unelected employees that are making decisions that on what's best for their own personal best interests. And then the other part is that the technocrats controlling all of this, that it is censorship to push a government purpose, to snuff out dissension. And this is really what it's all about. Like, if you're a socialist or a communist, you don't want anybody that's disagreeing with you. You don't want anybody to have the ability to, create dissension, to have their own little group that says, hey, we don't agree with this and we're going to fight against it. To your local political parties. If you are a socialist, you're a communist, you're a technocrat, you can't have dissension, which is why those types of countries have such a tight grip on free speech, because the powerful cannot ever be questioned, because it might come out that maybe your idea is not so good. So, I mean, it's okay. So this is happening in Europe. When we come back from the break, I'm going to answer the question of whether or not this is happening here. We're always told all the time that this doesn't happen in Wyoming. We don't need a law for this. None of this is happening here. I'm gonna prove to you that it is after the break. It's spring-ish in Wyoming. Well, what that means for the uninitiated is that it's going to be 70 degrees one day and then snow 1.5 feet the next. And really, if you don't like those 2 options, just wait a little bit. The weather will change. I know it sounds a little stressful, but really you should put your mind at ease and buy a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They'll keep you warm and dry even on the nastiest, coldest spring-ish day, and they'll keep you cool and dry even when it's 75 and sunny. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you're not going to be disappointed. Are you one of those people that said something like this before Trump became president?
I have a house in Spain that is going to be ready right after the election.
Siberia, Nova Scotia.
I'm definitely moving to Canada. Straight to hell. Iceland, France.
Asia's pretty cool.
And has the past 5 weeks just been more than you could bear? If that's the case, you have come to the right place. All you need to do is call my friend Rebecca Bextel at Compass Real Estate. She has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market all across the state of Wyoming. Last year, she sold around $30 million worth of property. Everything from small residential properties all the way up to big giant ranches. So if you've got to get the heck out of Dodge, if you've got to be gone Johnson because you can't stand that Trump is the president, call Rebecca Bextel. Her phone number is 307-699-3519. Let me say that one more time for you in case you missed it. 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Number 36 on the list of the 100 podcasts you need to pay attention to in 2025. Thank you to FeedSpot. Thank you to all the Cowboy State Politics listeners. We couldn't do this without you. Nor would there really be any purpose in doing it without you, which is why I'm thankful each and every day for you to listen to the program.
Just reminded me of Steve Martin's line with he's looking at the audience during his monologue section, and he says, "I don't need you. I can do this act alone." I often do.
I often do. But thank you very much for listening, paying attention to the show, and your support. I really appreciate it. Couldn't do it without you. Now, we often hear that none of this free speech problem is happening in Wyoming. We don't have that problem here. I don't even know why you're putting this law forward. It just doesn't make any sense. Well, the truth is that there are attempts to quash free speech pretty much everywhere, because everywhere you go, whether it's at the local level or the state level or the national level, you do have people that don't like dissent, that they have an agenda that they want to push, and they're either unwilling or incapable of dealing with any sort of arguments to the contrary, that we just attempt to, squash it out. And most of the time, it's through laws that are titled things like bias-motivated crime, or you might have heard them as hate crime laws. Now, most people in Wyoming would say, we don't have that sort of thing here. We don't really do that. Well, in 2023, the city of Gillette passed a hate crime ordinance. From Wyoming Public Radio, June 7th of 2023, and I quote, the Gillette City Council voted in favor of implementing a malicious harms ordinance on another 4-3 vote on June 6th. It comes after the ordinance was narrowly approved on 2 other 4-3 votes on its 2 other readings. Gillette joins Cheyenne, Casper, Laramie, and Jackson, which have similar ordinances. Wyoming and South Carolina are the only 2 states that don't have a statewide hate crime law. The city council chamber wasn't as well. Let's see. I don't know this here. According to city communications member Jennifer Toscana, who, by the way, when I originally covered this story, did not respond to Cowboy State Politics, the city received a total of 138 email messages on the ordinance since it was introduced, with 80 in support and 58 opposed. I don't believe that for a second. I don't believe that Wyoming citizens are in favor of this sort of bull crap. However, this doesn't include private emails, texts, and other opinions voiced to council members outside of these messages. So, in any case, the city of Gillette passed this what do they call it? Malicious harms ordinance, and it's still in effect. Now, again, that's at the city level. And by the way, I always tell you that your liberty is more in peril at the local level than it ever is at the state level or at the national level, because your local government makes decisions on the things that affect your life more directly than anything else. Think about this, right? So they pass a dumb ordinance that, I don't know, you can't have your grass taller than 8 inches. Okay, well, I will admit, an 8-inch lawn, 8-inch high lawn, kind of, I don't really like to look at it, but it's not my property, and you should be able to do whatever you want with your own property, regardless. But so let's say the city passes an ordinance that you have to cut your grass. Well, that directly affects you. Or let's talk about taxes. There are a lot of towns in Wyoming, Sheridan being one of them, that pass, the general purpose excise tax, or an additional 1% sales tax on your purchase. Those directly affect you. Now, if the state passes a law, that's one level removed from where you actually live. And a lot of times, the Wyoming legislature will pass all sorts of laws that may or may not directly affect you. And if you take it to the national level, well, then you're even more removed. The chances of you being affected by something at the national level, most of the time pretty low, unless, of course, you're a gun enthusiast and there's the suppressor thing in the big beautiful bill that may or may not get repealed. So that would affect you as a gun enthusiast. But my point is that at the local level, there are more threats to your liberty than at any other place. So Gillette, Jackson, Cheyenne, Laramie, they all have these hate crime statutes, which means, if you make some random comment while you're walking down the street, well, you could be reported for violating it. That's how the Gillette ordinance works, that somebody was being threatened by what you said. First, that's bull crap. You have the freedom of speech, and just because I say something, that's not going to directly harm you. The American system, at least partially, was built upon the idea that your rights end where mine begin. John Stuart Mill called it the harms principle. Now, of course, John Stuart Mill was writing in the 1830s, I think it was like 1820s, 1830s. Anyway, his harms principle basically said that your rights end where mine begin. That unless there's actual harm to another person, you ought to be able to do whatever you want. And the American system is built that way, that unless you can prove that you were harmed in one way, shape, or another, there's no reason to have any sort of complaint. So the last time, go ahead.
I just wanted to say something about the 8-inch tall grass.
Yeah, you need to mow your yard, by the way.
A lot of that, of course, is fire.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
The weeds get high, they dry out. Now you're a fire hazard. So you have that thin line, which we kind of cross there by requiring somebody to do something because something bad could happen. It's very similarly related to the hate crime ideas. And I don't know if you're going to go to this gal in UW, but I want to hear what she has to say.
Yeah. So you're exactly right. And let me give you a better example, Ken. Not that long ago, there was a Sheridan City councilman. I always forget his name. His first name is Jacob, but I mean, total weirdo. He proposed an ordinance that would tell you when you had to trim your dog's toenails. I am not even kidding. Now, that one didn't pass, but it's an elected city councilman saying that we need a law telling you how long your dog's toenails can be. Now, I'll admit, when my dogs need a little toenail clip, it's pretty obvious. They'll jump up on me, and I'm like, whoa, that one's a little bit long. But that's my dog. It's not your dog. And if I'm a responsible pet owner, my dog's not going to jump up on you anyway, though sometimes mine do, which is why they get thrown out back when Agent 29 comes over. But anyway, we don't need a law to tell you to do that. Now, the last time this hate crime thing, and you know what? Let's go ahead and take a break because this one's kind of long. And when we come back, I'm going to show you what happened the last time one of these stupid hate crime laws was brought up in the Wyoming legislature. If you've listened to Cowboy State Politics for any length of time, you've heard this, but it's just as shocking now as it was the first time I heard it. And we'll do that after a completely obnoxious profit timeout.
U.S. Coin Capital, we hear from Americans across the United States who have a growing concern about the future purchasing power of U.S. paper money. Many Americans are looking for an alternative for long-term capital. For more than 35 years, the people at U.S. Coin Capital have educated American investors on how to properly accumulate United States gold and silver coins. Call us at 1-800-878-2646 or visit us on the web, uscoincapital.com.
Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics.
Some say standing up for what you believe in is being extreme. Ask any woman in Wyoming. They'll tell you this is called courage. The mainstream media claims that holding the line on important issues is being unreasonable. My mom taught me this is called staying true to our principles. In other places, people argue you always have to compromise to get something done. Here in Wyoming, we know that some things are worth protecting at all costs. Some say it's time we give up on the values that made our state great to accommodate toxic culture. I say it's time to stand tall and protect the values that have served Wyoming well for over 134 years. Join Honor Wyoming as we defend and preserve the Wyoming way of life. Find out how you can make a difference today.
Visit honorwyoming.org. Welcome back to the program, Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics Live. If you want to be part of the show, the phone number is 307-374-8989, 307-374-8989. Whatever's on your mind, go ahead and give me a call and we'll talk about it. I can't promise how long we're going to talk about it, but we'll at least give it a go. So if you want to be part of the show today, the phone number is 307-374-8989. We're often told that really bad stuff doesn't happen in Wyoming. We're told that, this is such a great place, and the people that live here are so good that we would never hear any of this stuff that's happening overseas or happening in New York. That just doesn't happen here. Well, in 2021, there was House Bill 218. Now, House Bill 218 was called the Bias Motivated Crime Bill, and it was sponsored by Pat Sweeney, a name that I haven't talked about for a really long time, but one of the most liberal members to ever grace the floor of the Wyoming House of Representatives. Grace is the wrong word to use with Pat Sweeney. But anyway, the 218 was sponsored by him.
Yeah, for those of you that might not know, he's still there in the Capitol all the time. Now he's a lobbyist.
He's a lobbyist. Now, that's what some of these liberal former legislators do.
It's kind of funny because he's never once approached me.
Yeah, I wonder why. Well, anyway, so he sponsors House Bill 218, and it came up for a hearing in the House Judiciary Committee. And, all the liberal legislators, they were all about this thing. or at least that they were going into it. Well, there was a group of students from the University of Wyoming that were attending the hearing, and this soundbite, I've had it for quite a long time, and just listen to it, and then imagine the rest of what they said, because this is the clean part. Go ahead and hit it.
Since there aren't any anti-hate crime laws, they are very limited. Wyoming is one of 3 states that has no anti-hate crime laws. You would think a lynching that happened in this state would be the reason that an anti-hate crime bill was passed, but no. This state has a history of racism and hate crime. Do you want this state to always be remembered by those same events that took place? It is 2021. It is time we change the state. How many times do we have to sit here and wait for you to do something to protect us legislation-wise? You always push it away because you are biased by being mostly white and not accepting the fact that these laws weren't meant for you to ever ignore. We are tired of being ignored and pushed out because it doesn't fit your agenda. You are elected by the people to serve the people. We are the people. Why do people of color have to depend on white people to be protected? Why do we have to face our oppressors to be protected? Why do we have to beg to be protected? At this point, we might as well start calling all of y'all masses.
Whoa. And like I said, that was the clean part. Now imagine what would happen if, I don't know, that person was put in charge of creating policy. Come on, Agent 29. I gave you the perfect open.
You did. There's no excuse.
Yeah, I have the. Go ahead and play the soundbite anyway. It's fun.
Yes, I like your plan, except it sucks. So let me do the plan, and that way it might be really good.
I like your plan, but it sucks. So anyway, the question, and I want to get your take on this, Agent 29, since you are a legislator. So these folks come before the committee, and in the soundbite, you heard them say, well, you're biased by being mostly white. You're ignoring us. Why do we have to depend on you to do something legislation-wise? Well, maybe because we don't need that law, because we have the freedom of speech. And obviously, she was exercising her freedom of speech, although I think she should have been kicked out of the committee. But Go ahead.
My wife is a teacher, and she primarily works with, grade school kids. And a lot of times they will express some sort of an opinion, and she will tell them flat out, you don't know enough to have an opinion yet. and occasionally that's true even at the college level, like a lot. You don't know what you don't know. You hear something that sounds good and seems like an injustice, but you really don't know how the world works yet. And it's a little bit difficult to tell someone, especially at that age where they're trying to establish their independence, and I'm a free thinker, and like we said earlier, what does Old Glory mean to me? That's basically it. But to sit there and listen to her, you could just tell she was getting so wound up and getting so agitated. That's when somebody needs to step in and take a step back, maybe ask a couple of questions, defuse the situation. But they let her just keep winding herself up.
Oh, yeah. So the committee chairman during that meeting was Jared Olson. One of the other members on the committee was Barry Crago. Poison Barry Crago was there. And you can still get on YouTube and watch this. You'd have to go to, maybe during the break, I'll see if I can find that YouTube video for you and throw it up on the website. But the point here is that the folks that say, well, we don't have this problem in Wyoming, anytime you hear that phrase come out of somebody's mouth, you just automatically assume the opposite, because it's probably true. I mean, I led this segment telling you about a ordinance in Gillette that's all about hate crime, and having hurt feelings and being able to submit a report on somebody, or that you have folks at the state level that want to push this sort of thing. Now, thankfully, House Bill 218 died a quick death in that committee, as it should have. And for a while, this same piece of legislation was pushed nearly every session. So that, and here's another piece about that soundbite that's also kind of interesting. I grabbed it in 2021, and at the time, if you were a conservative on social media, and especially if you were vocal like myself, you were getting shadow banned all over the place. I did have a Parler. I did have an account on Parler, and it actually had a lot of followers on it. And then all of a sudden, Parler got shut down. And the soundbite I played for you really is the clean part. In in her testimony, she drops the N-word a couple of times. There's a couple of F-bombs in there. And what I ought to do is go back and grab it again, because I could definitely get away with playing quite a bit more of it now than I could in 2021.
Maybe you could, maybe you couldn't.
Well, yeah, I mean, you still have to edit it a little bit.
Depends on who the producer is.
Yeah, well, it's pretty bad. My point is that in this country and in Wyoming, we had serious problems with free speech. Not problems with free speech. We had problems with people trying to censor free speech. And this is something that happens all over the place, not just in Wyoming, or not just in New York, not just in San Francisco, but all over the place.
But it's happened unofficially everywhere.
Everywhere.
One of my favorite things to do when I'm just trying to not think is I go back and I watch.
That happens often for you, doesn't it?
It does.
I'm just kidding.
I go back and watch a Dean Martin celebrity roast.
Those are hilarious.
Yeah, they're hysterical. And every joke that is told, it's all about race. It's all about all these other things. There is no way in hell that you could even come close to doing that today. It would just not be accepted. And I'm not saying that those things are necessarily good.
No.
But the freedom to be able to say it. And the other thing was, people could hear a joke about their race or whatever it was and shrug it off and see the humor in it and move along.
Well, just imagine if somebody like George Carlin started getting popular. I mean, he's still popular now, but let's just imagine that right now, George Carlin comes on the scene and he starts dropping the same jokes that he did in, his entire career. There is no way that he would get near the attention that he did, when he first started his career. I mean, think about it, the 5 words you can't say on the radio. And of course, that was distributed on a record to begin with. But there's all sorts of different pieces that he did that I think are hysterical. But there's no way that he would get away with that now, simply because we become way too sensitive and we think that you have a right to not be offended. And you don't. You don't at all. You should embrace the premise that everybody else has free speech too. Now, if you are incapable or unable to defend yourself in the free marketplace of ideas, well, that's not everybody else's problem. That's your problem, that you need to figure out how to make your point and to argue your position. And you don't need legislation to do it for you. This is the very nature of freedom. Freedom, at its very core, is dangerous. And that's why we love it. Because, take the Second Amendment. And this is kind of a, maybe a graphic way to put it, but the price of your freedom to be able to own and keep and bear arms is the possibility that some wacko might shoot you. But you also have the freedom to defend yourself. Freedom is inherently dangerous. And if it is not, then you do not have freedom.
There's a lot of truth in what you're saying, but the truth of the matter is that all of these laws that try to protect us and make us safer are a facade. They're a lie.
Yes, they
You're
are.
really not any safer. Do you think there aren't guns in schools?
Absolutely.
Good
point.
As soon as any person with ill will decides to do it, and we hear about them often, they go in and do something. So the fact remains that we are not safe. We are not in a protected place. And
but you are, because it's up to you.
Yeah. I hear so many times, the children just need to feel safe. No, children need to understand the world is a dangerous place.
Absolutely.
And they need to prepare themselves and keep an eye out and be aware.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there is no better example of that than the Second Amendment. I mean, you have the right to carry a gun, to keep and bear arms. And I mean, that freedom is so precious that it really only exists here. In some states, you can't even, you would fight tooth and nail to get a concealed weapons permit. The lovely Christine has a client who moved here from California, who actually has a concealed weapons permit from California. And the last time she was in the salon, I was shocked, because I'm like, holy cow, how did you get that? And she kind of smiled and she says, well, kind of has something to do with my career, but She says, I do have a concealed weapons permit. And we got on this discussion about how states that don't allow you or that highly restrict your freedom to carry a weapon, really, you're not safe at all. Think about it, right? Like inner city LA, right? It's a pretty dangerous place. Or San Francisco. That's a better example. Sacramento. So when I worked for AT&T, I spent a month in Sacramento teaching classes. I was a corporate trainer for them. Well, where my hotel was at, man, every night I would hear gunshots. Not a safe place at all. Well, part of that is because you really don't have the right to possess your own gun and protect yourself. I mean, anytime.
Same was true. My dad used to teach at Tulane. He lived right off the French Quarter down in New Orleans. I'd never heard so much gunfire in an evening.
Right. It's like, am I at the range?
Yeah, it was kind of crazy.
But anyway, we're going to take another break. And when we come back, some more who saw that coming type of story. But we'll be back in a minute. You're going to love this next one. Apparently, you can get a 21% and still get a D. Well, in California anyway. You are listening to Cowboy State Politics Live. You can listen to the program on YouTube, on Facebook, on X, on Rumble, pretty much everywhere. It's almost like I'm omnipresent. If you miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics Live, you can always go to the live replay, which is located at the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, under the live replay button. You can listen to Cowboy State Politics Live every Tuesday through Friday at 8 a.m. You can listen to the Cowboy State Politics podcast anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest place is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles that I might bring up during the course of a program. That way, if your name is Joe Biden and you can't remember if you had your pudding today, well, I probably can't help you with that, but I can definitely tell you why you should have never ran for president. And now, back to our program. No longer do we strive for excellence in education in Colorado anyway. Well, we always strive for excellence on Cowboy State Politics. That's why I'm documented to be almost always right 99% of the time. It's a record that nobody can really come close to. And, you know, at this point, they probably, well, you know what? I would be willing to let the cow pie reset everything. And we could just start over and just see how well they do actually reporting the truth. Now, I would say we could do the same thing with the Pravda on the Platte or the Wyoming turkey vulture, but we wouldn't get very far. So, but with the cow pie, I'm feeling magnanimous this morning. Maybe we should consider resetting their record and just see how well they do. I don't know. I'll call B. Wayne Hughes and see what happens there.
Yeah, I'm opposed to that because I know that would get tasked to me.
Of course you do. So another piece, and again, this is kind of the long segment of who saw that coming, but from the Post-Millennial, San Francisco students can graduate with failing grades under the new Grading for Equity guidelines. Perhaps you've seen this. And I quote, on Tuesday, The San Francisco Public School District announced a new grading policy that will allow students to graduate classes with a score as low as 21%. The grading for equity method eliminates homework and weekly test scores from a student's final semester grade. Instead, there will be one test at the end of each semester to decide if a student has passed the class. The final exam can be retaken several times. Maria Su, the superintendent for the San Francisco Unified School District, enacted the new guidelines without seeking approval from the board, according to the nonprofit. The changes will impact 10,000 students across 14 high schools in California's Bay Area. Students, now you're going to love this, Agent 29. Just are you prepared? Are you ready?
Yes, I like your plan, except it sucks, so let me do the plan, and that way it might be really good.
Indeed. So students may submit assignments late. They may fail to attend class or choose not to attend at all without consequence to their academic performance. As of current, receiving an A requires a minimum score of 90%, while a D is set at 61%. Now, under the new scale, a student can obtain an A with a score of 80%, typically a B minus, and a D with a score as low as 21%, which is otherwise in other parts of the world known as an F. So I know that this is a scene out of the movie Idiocracy. Now, you've probably never watched that, Agent 29, but if you were to watch it, you and I would sit there going, oh my God, that sort of stuff is happening. And here's what I mean by that, is that we are increasingly trying to get away from the notion of excellence, what the Romans called arete, in favor of mediocrity. That is, the mediocre. And we are structuring our entire society around things that are just good enough. See, it is good enough to pass with a D. D is for diploma. And so if we redefine what a D is, well, that means you just don't have to perform.
The company that I worked for almost 20 years had a little motto, and it was, we strive for perfection, we settle for excellence.
There you go.
And I like that. But then there's...
That woman was out of control. She was shoving federal agents. She was out of control. The days of that crap are over in this country. We're going to have law and order.
Are over. Well, not in San Francisco. Now, it's true that this whole grading policy did not fly with parents. I know you might find that hard to believe, but it didn't. Educators, students, and parents have expressed concerns regarding the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Initiative, particularly how it would impact academic standards and college readiness. The San Francisco School District's experiment comes in spite of President Donald Trump's executive order signed in January that eliminated DEI programs in federal taxpayer-funded institutions. Supporters of the policy argue that by reducing the emphasis on behavior-based penalties like missing or late assignments, it more accurately reflects a student's learning, while critics believe it would hurt students who are already on pace for placement. Now, there are a couple of reasons why we have a grading scale. One is it's to gauge your performance, how well you are learning, right? If you get a D in a class, we can probably assume that you didn't learn the material well enough, or at least as good as somebody who received an A. It's the classic thought experiment that when you're going to average everybody's grades in a classroom, the first test, it turns out pretty good for everybody, because you still have the people who are really trying and they're going to get A's, and the people who are still trying but perhaps not as good as your A students, they still get a B, and the average grade of the class turns into a B. When the next test rolls around, the folks that really, really try, they don't try as hard because everybody gets the same grade. And the folks who tried a little bit less or perhaps were a little bit less talented, well, I mean, they just do what they think is the average. And then the people who never try or who just put forth a minimal amount of effort, they don't put in any effort at all. And then the average grade becomes a C.
We call that socialism.
We call that socialism, my friends, where each according to his need and from whom... I always forget how it is. It proves I'm not a socialist because I can't remember that stupid Karl Marx phrase. But anyway, the end of that story is on the third test. The folks that usually try pretty hard don't try at all. And the folks who tried a little bit less and perhaps were not as talented, well, they don't try at all either. And the folks who never worked hard for anything, well, they still keep doing it. And the average grade becomes an F. That is the definition of socialism, my friends, and it is exactly what's happening in San Francisco. Now, good job, parents and students and other educators, for saying, no, this is bullcrap. But Agent 29, this is also an example of something that is happening in Wyoming, not to this degree, of course, but many schools, Johnson County, have adjusted their grading scale to now it's either a 1, 2, 3, or 4. We don't have all of the delineations in performance. You're either a 1, 2, 3, or 4. And we've done away with A's and B's and F's because, it might hurt your feelings. My friends, we need to get away from this whole feelings crap. One of the things that irritates me the most is when I'm talking to someone and they say, I feel, and then they finish the sentence. No, you don't feel that. You think that. But it is a symptom of what is happening in our culture, that we no longer work on facts and figures and reality. It's all about feelings, which is why we tend to have this change in language.
2 + 2 is 4, not 5 if you want it to be 5. And this is not to be discriminatory. This is to stand up for language. Words mean things.
Words do mean things. And when we start to monkey around with them, the meaning tends to slip its way into our culture. So all of a sudden, when we start focusing on feelings, well, then instead of using that gray matter that's between your ears, you tend to focus on feelings. Now, here's another example of where this is, and perhaps this is a follow-up from what we talked about yesterday on the program, but there's a study out that too much use of AI is tied to too much reliance on AI is tied to lower grades and lower motivation. Who saw that coming? And I quote, a study published in the Journal of Education and Information Technologies finds that students who are more conscientious tend to use generative AI tools like ChatGPT less frequently, and that using such tools for academic tasks is associated with lower self-efficacy, worse academic performance, and greater feelings of helplessness. The findings highlight the psychological dynamics behind AI adoption and raise questions about how it may shape a student's learning and motivation. Generative AI refers to computer systems that can create original content in response to user prompts. Large language models such as ChatGPT are a common example. These tools can produce essays, summaries, explanations, or even simulate conversation, making them attractive to students looking for quick help with academic tasks. But their rise has also sparked debate among educators who are concerned about plagiarism, reduced learning, and the ethical use of AI in classrooms. So the argument here is pretty simple. Why do your own work when you can cheat off the computer? I mean, this is no different than copying out of a book or copying off of your neighbor's test. That you're just relying on a computer-generated thing where you just have to ask it one question and it spits out a whole bunch of stuff. But the problem here is garbage in, garbage out. And so
you keep using the word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
No, it does not mean what you think it means. The point being here is that if you are not putting in any effort whatsoever, if you are not trying to achieve excellence in whatever it is that you're doing, and you're relying on what other people have put into a computer, you're not going to learn, you're not going to succeed, you're not going to be effective, and you are not going to achieve. Our system used to work based on the idea that if you work hard, you will be successful in whatever it is that you're doing. Now, I'm not arguing that everybody gets the same outcome. You have the freedom of opportunity in America and by that I mean that everybody starts at the same level, right? Everybody's got the same opportunities. And, the truth is that some people are smarter than others. Some people are more skilled with their hands than others. Some people become rocket scientists while other people are really good at landscaping. That doesn't mean that their work is of any less value. It's just different. And, a good example is the interaction between me and the lovely Christine. I tend to be very good with the written word. I tend to be very good at learning things and reading things and being able to express them. But I can't draw you a picture. I mean, I guess I could draw you a stick picture, but it's really not going to be that great. Nor can I look at someone and turn a hairball into something that looks really pretty. I can't do that. I am not a visual type of artist. Now I'm hell on wheels behind a microphone, but that doesn't mean that ability, that skill translates into being able to paint the Mona Lisa. We all have different abilities. We all have different skills. And it doesn't mean that any one of them is more valuable than the other. This is the big argument we have between going to a tech school and going to, say, a liberal arts college.
So I've been sitting here thinking about the feelings part.
Yeah,
We're
okay.
talking about that. God's pretty smart.
Yeah.
God created humankind. Male and female created he, them. And we're different. We've had that discussion. But one of the ways that we tend to be different, and there are exceptions to every rule, but generally, men are more analytical.
Yep.
They're more farsighted. I'm going to go from here to Oregon. And the woman immediately reacts to how she feels about that. Well, what are we going to eat along the way?
Sure.
How are we going to get, and we need both sides of that. But what we're seeing, I think, and this may be another show another time, is the feminization of the culture, where the risk-taking, adventurous, toxic masculine is being taken away, and we're putting the emphasis on let's keep everybody safe, let's not frighten anyone, let's not allow anyone to feel not at ease, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that causes a problem because the world is what the world is.
Absolutely.
And it's not a safe place.
Absolutely. And successful people generally tend to take bigger risks. I don't know a single successful business person that hasn't taken a risk, that hasn't expended their own money, that hasn't had an idea and invested everything they own into it. And worked hard to make it happen. There isn't any successful business person or successful, you don't really have to be in business, but any successful person at all, if you don't take a risk, you're not going to it. And here's the thing, like if you are not willing to use your gifts that God has given you, and you're going to, exchange those for feelings, well, we are not going to progress as a society. And I know that's a large claim, and I'll unpack it here in just a second.
Well, you carry this thought out to its obvious conclusion. Maybe it isn't that obvious. If you take away somebody's right to fail, you take away their right to succeed. And we are constantly trying to take away, 21 points is a D. You're taking away somebody's right to fail.
Yes.
And when you do that, you take away their right to succeed.
Yeah, absolutely. That is an excellent point. Because when I had the stepkids around, I used to tell them, you don't learn anything from winning. You learn that it's a heck of a lot of fun and it feels good, but you don't learn anything from it. What you learn is what you did in that instance was good enough to win. You learn how to be good enough, I guess is what I'm saying. But we learn a heck of a lot from failure. Thomas Edison famously said, I didn't learn how to create a light bulb. I learned 500 ways not to create, how it doesn't work. I don't remember the exact phrase. But the point is that he failed over and over and over. One of my favorite posters, I had it on my wall in college, in the dormitory, is Michael Jordan. And it goes through all of his failures in his life. And, I've missed so many shots. I've lost this many games. I've, this many times in my career, I've been trusted to take the winning shot and I've missed. And the last line of it is, and that is why I succeed.
So that's what the Rockies are doing.
Yeah. Well, they are doing a bang up job, my friends. One more thought on this whole thing, that you have to take risks and you have to think things through, and you have to figure out how things work and how to make them work. And let me give you a perfect example. What we have here in the studio, and Ken, could you show the big picture here of the whole studio? Flip it over.
I could if that camera were plugged in.
Oh, well,
I can go physically manhandle one and twist it around.
Not. So what I'm getting at,
yeah, that's a camera that's not active right now.
Okay, well, show me the wide view then.
Okay,
one of them. Okay, there we go. See, perfect. So everything you see here on the table is the equipment that we use to do all the bells and whistles for the program, and we can do pretty much anything we want to do. Equivalent to what a normal news program can.
Except show you the other side of the studio when that camera's not hooked up.
Yeah, exactly right. Okay. So the point being is we've got a lot of equipment here, and it's expensive. I'll give you that. But it is no different than the $50,000 that a regular TV video studio has in it. Now, there may be that much money, in this entire room. There's probably more than that. But to run this program, we figured out a way to make everything work with what we had and to put out what I consider to be a quality program. But we didn't just stop and say, hey, we don't have this much money, so we can't do it. We took the tools that we had to create something that we wanted to put out, that we wanted to do. And it is being ingenious. It is thinking things through. It is problem solving. It is critical thinking. All of these things with this stupid grading scale, with AI, those are all things that students aren't learning. Critical thinking being the biggest part of it, I think.
As I look around the studio there and think about what things work and what things don't, that chalkboard sucks. That's all I can say.
Fair enough. We need to work on the chalkboard. But in any case, my point here is that if we do not challenge students, if we do not challenge everybody, if we don't strive for excellence, well, as Ken said, strive for perfection and we'll settle for excellence. I would argue that we shouldn't settle at all, that we should continue to work to be our best self, to be the best at whatever it is that we're doing. And again, I'm not saying that just because you're in construction that your contribution is any less than the guy who makes rockets for a living. The guy that makes rockets still wants a nice place to live, or the guy that can put in a pipeline. I know a lot of people that have tried to put in a sewer line in their backyard and they have backed up their entire sewer system just because they don't know what they're doing. Everything requires an expertise and whatever it is that's happening. I am not a mechanic. I can't tell you how to take apart my car, but if you want to do a podcast, I can show you how to do that. Point is that in everything that we do, we have to strive for excellence. And in all of these stories that we brought up today, it is examples of how we are dumbing down our culture. We're dumbing down the world that we live in. We're not succeeding. And really, if we just put our mind to it, we could.
I suppose it's up to me to point out that what we're doing here now is trying to cram a 2-hour show into 1 hour, and we kind of ran over.
Well, so what? It's our program. We can do what we want. And I think that, when I look through the stack of stuff here, I've got example after example after example of humans being stupid. And the truth is, we just need to get back to striving for excellence, doing a good job, being critical thinkers, and looking at our world with skepticism. And that's honestly, that is how you succeed. That you should question everything. As Thomas Jefferson said, question with boldness, even the very existence of God. And what he meant was, find out for yourself what is true. Find out for yourself what works and what doesn't work, and do it with diligence. Well, as Agent 29 aptly pointed out, we've kind of gone over on our busy broadcast hour, but that's okay. It's kind of training for next week. Starting on Tuesday, we're going to move to a 2-hour program. I've already got a couple of great interviews. Well, one great interview, one suspect interview already recorded. But starting on Tuesday, we're going to move to a 2-hour format. Same bat time, same bat channel, 8 a.m. Tuesday through Friday, on YouTube, on Facebook, on X, on Rumble, and of course, don't miss Weekend Update, which is going to be tomorrow on the podcast. It's a great interview with our good friend Chris Adamo, author of the book Rules for Defeating Radicals. You don't want to miss that interview. It's going to be a lot of fun. Have a good weekend, and we'll see you Tuesday.